Ink-a-dink, 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 ink-a-dink. Wow!
And a blessed Sunday morning to you. Welcome to Basil BuddhaCat Presents. We had a very interesting show Friday night discussing the gun control bill that Connecticut passed and what's transpired since then with our good and dear friend Marty Heiser. And the end of the show, lo and behold, we had a call in from Republican gubernatorial candidate Tom Foley from Greenwich, and we're going to try to get him back on. He said he'd give us a ring in a couple of minutes, and we'll discuss it. But first, I want to bring people up to snuff on Tom Foley, his credentials, or maybe we should allow him to do it. Okay, you think we should allow him to do it, and then we could comment perhaps on it later? Well, we'll lay the groundwork for it. Tom Foley, when he became after the invasion and occupation of Iraq, he was part of the group which oversaw what took place in Iraq after the invasion and occupation, when the provisional government was set up, and with the ultimate goal of having Iraqis govern themselves again. We had some folks in charge, and you could do your history checking because we don't want to call names, but we had some folks in charge, some Americans in charge that had control over the government, control over the country, that took some steps to tear it down in order to start all over again, so to speak. And, okay. Tweety is saying he's getting the pre-ring ring. So does that mean... Okay. Again, mid-sized phone. Marty deserves better than this. And we give him better than this. But for Governor Foley, or wannabe Governor Foley, we... said there, we just gave him the bump he needed. We already called him Governor Foley. Call up the election, it's done. I'm governor, he said. Okay, so let's talk about your background, because I think the best known portion of your background was during the time after the invasion and occupation of Iraq. And I'll let you speak to your bona fides. Okay, so you go ahead and we'll listen and perhaps comment as we see fit later. But go ahead. Okay. Tweety, you getting it up there on the screen? Okay, good. Yep. Okay, we're actually we don't have you on speakerphone because the phone we're using is. Well, it's not exactly your state-of-the-art Nickelodeon phone, and neither is our state-of-the-art, non-state-of-the-art cat-in-the-hat phones. But go ahead, continue. Tell us about your time in Iraq and your accomplishments there, because you were an executive authority there, and that's pretty much, it lines up pretty well with what you would be as governor of Connecticut. It's an executive position. You don't make laws. You provide leadership, but you don't make laws. You don't have the types of powers that the legislature has. They provide the laws with your guidance that come to your desk for signature, or for in the case of non-signature, in the case of vetoing, which happens sometimes. That's the governor's prerogative to veto, and we know that that when Connecticut for a large number of years had a Republican governor, and Jody Rell, she was at odds on a number of issues, a number of bills that the democratically controlled, the Democratic Party has had the both houses of the legislature for a goodly number of years, and there were some bills that were passed that she vetoed, and that's the governor's prerogative. Now, as with the federal government, what's required to override, I'm going to let you go and just you stick with this, Governor Foley. We're just giving you a little. Says there's another bump. Well, I'm not going to call you governor in training. Okay, but stay with us, Mr. Foley. We're going to just finish up this thought for the audience. Like in the federal government, the two houses of the legislature in Connecticut have the opportunity to override a gubernatorial veto, and that requires, I believe, a two-thirds majority, and both houses in the Connecticut legislature are more than two-thirds Democratic Party members. Now, of course, all those members, they're not on the same line about each and every subject, so there's no guarantee that you're going to get a veto overridden. But I want to send a little shout out to and I'm not sure he's going to like this shout out, but Senator Bob Duff from the Norwalk area, because there was a bill, it's a paid sick leave bill that the legislature passed while Governor Rell was in office, and now subsequently has been passed with Governor Malloy in office, that allows each and every person to take a minimum of 3 paid sick leave days. That's the standard, 3 sick leave days per year, and those are certainly good for and usable for not just a person being sick and not being able to get into work, but it's also for if a family member's sick. So if a mom or a dad who's in charge of taking care of child or children has child or children home sick, they can use some or all of those 3 paid sick leave days per year. And it's been found that 3 is the average. That's the national average, and so that was why the number 3 was agreed upon. But back to Bob Duff. Bob Duff was there when the bill was passed. He was a big proponent of the paid sick leave bill. He voted for it. He was a staunch believer in it. And then it was vetoed by Governor Rell, came back to the legislature. And on the vote to override, Senator Bob Duff miraculously or unmiraculously or fortunately or unfortunately, depending upon your point of view, switched sides and voted against overriding Governor Rell's veto. So there you go. You know, you live with the decisions, each and every one of you in the legislature, and it's you get in a lot of trouble when you try to ride both sides of the fence and try to take both sides of an issue. So there. So we've said it. Okay, Governor Foley, continue. Basil says, "You got one slippery tongue today." Yes, I do, and well, you know, you're the one that got kind of PO'd that Governor Malloy hasn't been on Progressive Soup. In fact, you think you should come on your show too, in order to get the Basil BuddhaCat Presents bump. So there you go. So here we're left with Greenwich businessman, multimillionaire Tom Foley, who's well, he's not financing his own campaign like he did 4 years ago for governor. This time he's taken public financing, and something happened along the way which has affected campaigns. And I just want to take a second on this. There's unlimited money, PAC money, that's allowed now not for supporting campaigns, because none of that money from individuals can go toward a candidate who's accepted public financing, but it can go toward negative advertising against their opponent, or issue advertising, which clearly attacks one side or the other. And there's going to be a lot of it this fall. You're going to see a lot of negative advertising. You're going to see a lot of groups that don't want to identify themselves, don't want to identify who's paying for their advertising. And it's a pretty slippery law. Connecticut's a little tougher than most states. It demands that that an advertisement identify somewhere in it the chief donors to that advertisement, the principal donors. So that's some way of at least knowing who's behind what you're hearing on television, and help you make a decision whether that's reasonable or unreasonable, whether it's factual, whether it's a lie, whether it's somewhere in between. Again, it all comes down to the voters. The voters are the ones that make the decision, and we live and die by the votes of our citizens, and that's one of the great things about America. You know, we get what we ask for, we get what we vote for, and it makes it hard to complain after the fact, although people tend to, especially those that are amongst the majority of people that don't vote. But, okay, go ahead, continue. Okay, he's, and Tweety, yep, good, Tweety's getting that on the screen. Talk about a little bit about your time, your executive time in Iraq. Okay, go ahead. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. Okay. Yep. Yeah, I'm listening. Continue. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the audience is seeing it up on the screen, so go ahead. Yep, I remember that. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Continue. Mm-hmm. No, Basil and I are paying very close attention to what you're saying, and we appreciate your candor on the subject of your time in Iraq in the provisional government. Okay, we're going to get back in a moment to that time in American history during the time after the downfall of Saddam Hussein, and while America was in the process of setting Iraq up, hopefully for being successfully self-governed at some future date when America actually left and Iraqis were responsible for their own destiny going forward. But okay. Now, we had Marty Heiser on the show. You know Marty. We had him on Friday night's show. We're going to get back to Iraq, but I want to just turn to the issue of Connecticut's gun law, which was passed about a couple of years ago, and it's been in effect for a while now. And we had Marty Heiser on talking about that, and I'm going to put forth to you the same suggestion that I put forth to Marty. Let you comment on it and talk about specifics about that law and your thoughts on it. But we put forth to Marty the notion that since the gun law went into effect, there have not been any mass murders in Connecticut. There haven't been any recreations of what took place in Sandy Hook. And facts are facts, and the fact is there haven't been any atrocities since then. There haven't been any mass murders since then, and based on that, we're gonna lay claim to that law having a positive effect. And of course, Marty. Okay, go ahead. Talk about that a little bit. I'm not going to say what Marty said. I know you didn't. You told me off camera that you did not get a chance to see the show, but you can catch it when it's aired again. That would be probably in another week. We'll probably reverse fields and have your interview on Friday night at 10 p.m. and we'll probably have Marty's interview on Sunday morning at 11 a.m. But go ahead. Talk about the gun control law. Okay. Okay. No, you've got at least a few minutes to spend on this. So take your time and take us through all your thoughts on this bill that was passed by the legislature and signed by Governor Dan Malloy. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, before we go back to Iraq and discuss that further, specifically, you have said that if you had been governor instead of Governor Malloy, you would have handled the gun bill differently. You would have you said you would have done things differently. So let's hear some specifics about that, if you will. Okay. Okay. You hear this? Okay, I'm gonna I think you've pretty much gone over there pretty thoroughly about how things would have been different if you had been governor. But before we get back to Iraq, I just want to say one thing, and I think this is what Basil and I, we had a discussion with Marty on Friday night. The contention we're making is that if there had been a tragedy of the sort that happened in Sandy Hook since the gun bill was passed, then what we would have been hearing from opponents of that gun bill were that something to the effect of, see, it didn't make any difference. See, that law didn't help at all. It didn't make any difference. So Basil's licking his lips already because he's thinking about a goose and a gander. He said, with Basil's permission, I told Marty that what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And certainly, if opponents of the gun bill would have said, and I think it's safe to say that opponents would have been saying this over and over and over again, if there had been a tragedy of that nature or of any nature involving what we call weapons of mass destruction, after the bill had been passed, opponents would have been saying, see, it didn't make any difference. Well, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And again, Basil's thinking goose and gander in a little different little different context than we are. But we have every right to say the opposite. We have every right to say, if you would have the right to say, see, it didn't make any difference, if something had happened, we certainly have the right on the other side of the discussion to say, see, it did make a difference. It has made a difference. And there's no absolutes on this discussion. There's no absolutes either way. But we could say that if there had been one tragedy since then, we could say, well, if not for the gun bill, there might have been 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 tragedies. And likewise, on your side of the discussion, you can say, well, there's no guarantee that without the gun law that was passed in the legislature and signed by Governor Malloy, without that law, there still wouldn't have been any tragedies. And that's, certainly within the realm of possibilities. But we're just picking up on our knowledge, our understanding of the claim that anti-gun legislation people would have said, and we're gonna make the same claim on our side. And I think we have every right and every reasonable responsibility to make that point. But okay, I understand we're not gonna. You had something else to say about the gun law and how it would have been different if you had been governor instead of Governor Malloy? Yeah, that sounds pretty familiar. Okay, let's go back to Iraq and tell us a little bit more about your time in Iraq as one of the key people in the provisional government that oversaw the country before Iraq began actually voting for its own people in government. Okay, go ahead. Yep. Okay, I just want to make a note to the audience, a side note, that we have on the phone, the comments you're seeing, we have on the phone Republican gubernatorial candidate Tom Foley, Greenwich businessman, not to hold it against him because a lot of people in politics are fairly wealthy. He's a wealthy person, not necessarily a bad thing. You see wealthy people do good thanks. Philanthropy. Sounds like we're looking back at. We've been watching the Wizard of Oz a little too much. Then we might as well just say good deed doers instead of philanthropists. But go ahead. Yeah. So okay, continue on. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now we're not taking any calls from any of your relatives today. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. Yeah, we just had a call from one of Basil's cousins, and we're letting it go to voicemail. Okay. But yeah, continue. Okay. I'm going to thank you very much for calling into the show and providing us some insight onto both your time as part of the Provisional Authority in Iraq after the invasion and occupation, and also for some commentary on Connecticut's gun control legislation. I've had Tom Foley, Republican gubernatorial candidate, and saw a banner the other day around Danbury that says, "Thank God, at least it wasn't Mark Boughton in again." So, okay, thank you for calling in, and Mr. Foley says Mark Boughton's a decent guy, and Nothing personal in the way he crushed him. Thank you for calling. Bye. Okay, we need to get some of our, we didn't do any commercials. We went commercial free Friday night. So we're going to have to, do some commercialing now, right? We're going to have to do some, because, we got to, television time isn't free. Well, on cable television it is. But, generically speaking, television time isn't free. So we're going to have to do a little note about our sponsors, and what better place to start than if we can find it. Okay, there we go. One of our key sponsors, 8 Ball. Now, what exactly, Basil? What exactly? I guess I shouldn't be saying this on camera because we're supposed to know what we're. It's sort of licorice looking. I don't smell any anise there, so it's not licorice. But I guess the point of doing 8 Ball is so we can do a follow-up with 12 Ball. Now, with 50% more ball. Okay. Okay, we always have the ever-popular, not A&W root beer, but our show, we're working on making a different product. Their new product, Popular. And this can doesn't have it airbrushed in or have it spray painted on or whatever, but it's actually, our product that we're sponsoring is PAW root beer. Paw root beer. And apparently, Paw root beer is improved over A&W root beer in that extra letter makes all the difference. Okay. We'll have to throw that back in the litter pan when we get done. And speaking of litter pan, we have Basil's preferred candy, Tootsie Roll. And we have, it's been sitting on the table now, so for a couple of months now, so it's melted quite a bit. I don't know if it's quite as volatile as it had been, but how do you know that Basil prefers Tootsie Roll to any other candy? All you have to do is take a peek into his litter pan, and that's the proof that you're looking for. Oh, and okay, Schweppes. Schweppervescence. And with that, we're going to sign off with Screw Fox News in parentheses. Here comes Cat News. Big and bold and better than ever. Have a blessed Sunday, and we'll see you again Friday night.
They say they'd rob your grandma blind on Wall Street, fritter her away her Medicare on Wall Street. And Pharma Oil and their pet fox don't care if she lives in a box, so long as they wear platinum jocks on Wall Street, Meow.